What is up, guys? Well, Terrifier 3 has now made its wide release debut. Last night, I was able to check out at my local theater the double feature where they were playing Terrifier 2, followed immediately by the third film. Had a couple of people from the followers and fans of the channel meet me out there. Got to meet some cool people, hang out for a couple hours after the movie and chat about it. I'll have a couple out-of-theater reactions in this video to show a couple of those people off. But now that I have seen the film twice, and now that I have had quite a lot of time to kind of sit on it and formulate my thoughts, it's time to talk spoilers, baby. So it should go without saying, but sometimes doesn't, that if you are a Terrifier fan and you have not yet experienced Terrifier 3, please do not let me detail the entire plot of the film for you. Go out to the theater, support independent horror, check out the film for yourself, and then come back here and check out my spoiler unpacking of Terrifier 3. And if you want a spoiler-free opinion that does not have anything that's going to ruin your experience whatsoever, click up here and check out my spoiler-free review. Now, there's a lot of things to discuss about this film. There's a lot more story here. We unpack some of the lore, some of the answers that were given, some of the questions that are still lingering. We're going to talk about all of the bloody, gory details regarding the massive kills that we have in this film. We're going to talk about a little of the inevitable controversy that surrounds not only this franchise, but specifically some of the things that they do here, and everything in between. And while if you don't live in Miles County, Art the Clown might not be roaming around your neighborhood, but you are still in a constant danger of identity theft. So check out the sponsor of today's video, Aura. Have you ever Googled yourself and found out how much of your personal information is just readily available to read on these public listing sites? Not too long ago, I Googled my name, and not only did I find a lot of my current personal information, but I found addresses and phone numbers dating almost 20 years in the past. The unfortunate reality is that a lot of data brokers make a killing selling all of your private info to robocallers and spammers, or really anybody who's willing to pay for private information. Your full name, email, address, phone number, medical history, closest living relatives, it's all out there. Well, luckily the sponsor of today's video, Aura, is here to help by identifying what data brokers are leaking your information and even submitting opt-out requests on your behalf. Legally, these brokers do have to remove your information if you ask them to do so, but they make it extremely difficult for you to do that. So why not just offload that burden onto Aura and let them do the heavy lifting for you? Recently, AT&T revealed that over 73 million customer records, existing and former, were leaked onto the dark web. They recommended that those affected use strong passwords, monitor account activity, and consider credit freezes and fraud alerts. Well, Aura does all of this for me with one app. No need to download a bunch of different applications and have multiple subscriptions just because a major corporation couldn't keep your personal information secure. I value my privacy, and if you value yours, you can go to aura.com/Cody Leach or click the link in the video description to start your 2-week free trial of Aura today. And thank you so much to Aura for sponsoring today's video. So the movie kicks off on Christmas Eve, presumably. And this is the opening 10 minutes that we have been hyped about, that we have heard all the reports about. I think Damien Leone himself even said the opening 10 minutes of this film is probably the most controversial thing that they have done yet. And it's the segment of the film, presumably, where we have heard about these people walking out or getting sick or passing out in the aisles. So there was a lot of hype behind this opening. And it's essentially an extension of what the Terrifier 3 teaser trailer is, where you have this little girl. She hears footsteps on the roof, goes to try to tell her parents, who are very impatient and want her to go back to sleep, and she goes downstairs and sees what she thinks is Santa Claus putting Christmas presents under the tree. And one of the things that he pulls out of his Lucky Santa sack is an axe. And so you have Santa Claus go upstairs and goes into her brother's room, who is a kid who's probably like 8 years old, 9 years old. And you start to hear the axe swing, and you start to hear flesh and bone and everything else. And let me tell you, this is the moment where I was like, ooh, I kind of knew they were going to go there. Please tell me they're not going to go too far. Because as a lot of you guys know, I don't have very many triggers out there, but as a parent, something extremely fucked up happening to a kid, especially the younger the kid is something that can very easily lose me. Babies especially, no, you'll lose me immediately with that. And so there was a lot of speculation after that teaser. They were like, oh my God, is Art going to be torturing kids in this movie? And I was very thankful throughout the film, even though there is a pretty high body count of children in this movie, that they were really wise and gracious, we'll say that, to not show a whole lot. A lot of it's implied, a lot of it is suggested, a lot of what you see that is actually like carnage is kind of aftermath. I was terrified that we were going to get something like the bedroom scene with a small child. To me, that would definitely be something that I would check out. I would not enjoy it. As much as I love what they're doing with these movies, as much as I love a lot of the people that are making these films, and I want to champion them, and I want to be a fan as long as they'll have me, that would have been the limit for me. For some of you, it wouldn't have been a limit, but that's fine. And this is going to be the element of this film that you're going to hear the most people debating back and forth. Did they go too far? And there's already been some comments in my review since it debuted last night saying, nope, as soon as I saw that they were doing that, I checked out.
I mean, it delivered on the kills. It was what I expected as far as the kills go. I'm not completely in love with it.
Yeah.
I love Terrifier. I love the second one. This one, I don't want to be negative. I don't want to be super negative. It was good. It was good.
Sit with it a little bit.
I got to sit with it a little bit, but it was good. It was good. I just wanted it to be great.
Okay.
All I got to say is, men, you ain't safe either. That's all I got to say. That's all I got to say.
Man, that was wild. I honestly did not think they'd have the balls to go as far as they did, but I'm glad that they did, and I'm looking forward to what other Damien's got cooked up next.
They probably should have called it Terrifier 3. Fuck them kids.
For real. If you a kid, not safe.
You hear this kid getting hacked up, and luckily you only hear it. And then Santa Claus moves out of that bedroom, goes into the parents' room, starts to hack up the father. And then the wife wakes up, sees the blood, and it's the first time we actually get to see Art Claus. We get to see him laughing and pointing, and chases the mom down the stairs, and she gets this close to salvation and then gets the axe. And so then you start to see body parts get chopped off, and the axe goes into the head. And then immediately followed by classic Art the Clown, where he's dipping Santa's cookies into some little blood-dripped milk and eating it and giving these little cutesy facial expressions. And that's kind of the magic of this franchise. You know, they can show you the most horrific thing, like the most taboo, line-crossing, stomach-churning thing, and then immediately follow it up with something that makes you laugh. And how they're able to balance that, I mean, for some people, it doesn't work, but for me, it absolutely does. It's just, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty wild that they're able to do that. And then, unfortunately, as he's washing the dish and again, continuing to kind of give you some laughs with Art the Clown, he hears a little tap, opens up the cupboard, sees the little girl who's been hiding there, waves at her, presumably kills her. And then we get the 5 years earlier text on screen, and it goes back to where we left off in Terrifier 2, where Vicky has given birth to Art's head in this mental asylum. You have the chick who played the Clown Cafe singer and guitarist comes in, and she's getting her face eaten by Art the Clown's head, and Chris Jericho comes in, gets stunned and shocked, and Vicky starts to overpower him. Meanwhile, you have Art's decapitated body that's left in the Terrifier, left in the circus, and this cop descends upon him and gets killed by the decapitated Art body. He gets onto the bus using the cop's decapitated head as kind of like a fill-in until he gets there, and then eventually you have decapitated Art body and Vicky teaming up to fuck up Chris Jericho. And then Art and Vicky get back onto the bus in another hilarious scene where they're covered in blood, they're covered in gore, and somebody who is dressed in the Miles County clown costume sees them and starts taking pictures and saying they killed their costumes, and they're just kind of giving silent expressions and smiles. And then they find this abandoned building and kind of go into a catatonic state. They basically rest until 5 years later. So then we go back to present day. Now, there was another thing. So this is a movie that really goes for all the taboos. So we have already crossed into killing children, and we have yet to see the end of that in this film. But now we move into the scene where they're in this abandoned building. Art just kind of sits down in this rocking chair in the attic, and Vicky gets into a bathtub, and she opens up her wrists with a piece of glass. And so then you have that imagery there. I want to be careful about using the word because sometimes YouTube can be a little finicky. But you have that imagery. And so we're 7 minutes, 10 minutes into this movie, and already we've crossed like 2 of the biggest taboos ever. And so I was like, holy shit, like we haven't even seen the title card yet. What the fuck does this movie have in store for us? So then we carry on to present day. And we catch back up with Sienna, Lauren Lavera. She's being checked out of a mental ward by her uncle and is brought back to his house where she is going to stay with her uncle, her aunt, and her niece, Gabby, who looks up to her and doesn't really have any knowledge of the events of what happened in Terrifier 2. And Sienna's fucked up. Sienna's got a lot of trauma, a lot of mental damage that's happening from the events of the second film, where she's seeing visions, she's hearing things. She's literally at a dinner table and she sees her friend from Terrifier 2, the one that got the acid in the face, taunting her and telling her it's her fault. She's struggling to reconnect with her brother Jonathan, who seemingly is trying to move on. He's off in college now. You know, he's very distant and doesn't really interact too much with his roommate. Meanwhile, the roommate's girlfriend is this podcast chick that's kind of doing everything wrong as far as how to interact with somebody that went through that type of experience. And so we're in a really interesting place with our protagonists here. Now, having the trauma chapter with our final girl is certainly not anything new, but I like what they bring to it here to definitely make it more extreme in typical Terrifier fashion. And I when I interviewed very briefly Lauren before the world premiere at Fantastic Fest, she had mentioned like having Mia from the Evil Dead Fede Alvarez film as a big influence in kind of the direction she wanted to take Sienna and kind of go unhinged with it. And I picked up a lot of that whenever I was watching this, having been primed with seeing where her influences were coming from. So I really dug kind of where we catch back up with these characters. They're broken, they're hurt, and there's not a lot of hope that they're going to be able to put the pieces back together. Then eventually we get back to Art and Vicky. And you have these 2 like workers that are coming into this abandoned building. I don't know, to like clear it, I guess, for demolition or whatever the fuck they're doing. And they descend upon Art and Vicky, and they're reawakened. And while Vicky goes to town on one of them with the piece of glass that she has had in this curdled blood-filled bathtub, you have Art going to town on the other guy. And while this kill didn't stick in my brain from the first time that I watched the film, because there's so much to process on your first viewing experience, on my second viewing, this kill was my favorite in the entire film. You have this guy that, you know, Art the Clown gets on top of him. He's face down on the ground, and Art gets on top of him and starts slashing at him with this razor blade. And, you know, I think he bites his fingers off and pops his arm off. But then you get this effect where he starts to cut into his scalp with this razor blade and then starts to like peel away at the scalp and moving the flesh around the skull. And then you get this one quick little take of like his skull being like degloved, and I don't know what term you want to use, deskulled, but the skin just rips down and you just see the skull and all the remnants of everything inside. And holy shit, did it look real. And so it's a very quick but effective and a standout kill for me. And even though we're still in the first act-ish of the movie, like that to me on my second viewing was the kill where I was like, yep, that's my favorite of this third film. That one was fucking awesome. Favorite kill, Grumpy?
Grumpy. Gotta go with the shower scene. That was pretty vicious. Fucked up.
Do you feel like the shower scene tops the upside down bisection and the bedroom kill, or what's still the standout kill of the series?
For me, it's the hacksaw scene. I don't feel like that's been topped.
There you go.
That shit disturbed the fuck out of me.
Favorite kill of the movie?
I gotta go either the shower scene or the dude getting his face ripped off over his head. That caught me off guard.
I think that one's my favorite. And then Art and Vicky go back into Art's workshop, where we have seen for all 3 of these films. And in every single one of these movies, he kind of crafts some new weapon. And so you see him working with this liquid nitrogen tank and kind of turning it into a fire extinguisher. And now we cross our third major taboo, which is animal cruelty. And I think they were very careful to use an animal that, for whatever reason, a lot of us don't have a lot of sympathy towards. And so as much as if he would have done this to a dog or a cat, you would have heard fucking screams across the entire country last night. But you have rats. you have the rodents of the animal kingdom, and he tests out this little liquid nitrogen fire extinguisher on this rat, turns it into a rat sickle, smashes it, and then throws the remnants over to the other rats to let them get a little snack. And so at this point, I was just like, God damn, like we're still in Act 1, and now we've crossed 3 of those do not cross lines. Like, wow, they went for it. They were making a statement with this one. And any one of those 3, when I was saying in my spoiler-free review how the movie might go too far for some, any one of those 3, it's a minefield for a lot of people, where I actually am very curious in kind of looking at some of the reviews and the reactions after this weekend is over and seeing how many people really latch into one of those about the reason why this went too far, or why it went too far for them, or why they couldn't stomach it. But yeah, you have this new weapon now that we're going to see. And right after that, you have the scene where Art encounters Santa Claus. And this was by far the funniest scene in the entire film. Like, just seeing David Howard Thornton's expression whenever he walks by this bar and then comes back to it and like is so enamored with the fact that he sees Santa Claus inside and rushes inside and he's pointing at the graphics. Like, him and his interaction with David Roebuck was just awesome. And David Roebuck, I love when this guy shows up in horror, because he is just such a funny character actor that he always brings some form of charm in there. And so you have Art hanging out with David Roebuck and Clint Howard at the bar, thinking he's sitting down with the actual Santa Claus. And as you can expect, things go very south. So they hang out, they buy Art a drink, he spits it out, just like a child when they first taste alcohol, and everybody starts to get pissed. And then they literally get pissed because Art empties his bladder on top of Santa's lap. And so things quickly turn south, and then Art goes to town on everybody in this bar. First using his pistol, which yet again, breaking the rule of that a lot of you guys hold true, like slasher villains can't use guns. If they don't exclusively use slashing weapons, they don't count. Well, fuck you. Art said to hell with that rule. I use everything, bitch. So takes out Clint Howard, takes out the bartender, and leaves old Santa Claus to test out this new weapon. So we get Daniel Roebuck. Did I say David Roebuck earlier? I meant Daniel if I did. Sometimes my brain doesn't compute names. Daniel Roebuck, we have attached to this chair, and Art the Clown starts to tease him, starts to mentally fuck with him, and then eventually just unloads this liquid nitrogen onto his limbs and starts smashing it with a little hammer. And oh man, you talk about something looking real and just imagining what that must feel like. Tears off his beard, and now we have Art Claus. Now we have the full Christmas theme Art the Clown. Eventually, Sienna and Gabby are in the mall looking for presents, looking for certain things, and we get this scene where Sienna first sees Art the Clown again after 5 years. And he's wearing a Santa mask, he's wearing the Santa outfit, so you can't immediately tell that it's Art, but she can tell. And you get the Santa Claus that goes through and does the little classic Art the Clown wave. She starts to have her panic attack, starts to wonder if this is actually in her head or if this is real, which again is one of the elements that I really liked about what they brought here, is that psychological torment of like, am I seeing reality right now, or is my brain betraying me yet again? And then Art the Clown sees the mall Santa has went to go take a little lunch break, and he sits in and starts giving all these children these gifts. Another very funny scene, seeing his facial reactions as they all crowd him and try to get these toys. And oh, if they didn't make enough of a statement with that opening, you get these security guards that notice that Art is not their Santa and starts pulling him away, kicks him out, and this kid goes to open a box, and a bomb goes off. And this entire little group of children are just decimated with an explosion. And again, you see the explosion, obviously, and then you just see the aftermath. You see all these little limbs sitting everywhere while Art is laughing, and you're just like, Jesus Christ. Oh, Dead Meat's going to have to do a kill count and then a kid kill count, because those are 2 different videos right there. So yeah, Terrifier 3... fuck them kids. That's what this chapter should have been called. I will hold true to that. So yeah, you have Art the Clown just racking up the body count of underage children here. And again, like it's something that if I had heard that they were doing all this, like if I had heard a description of these scenes before I saw the film, I would have been very worried, because I just that's a very touchy thing for me. But as crazy as it is, I feel like the way they executed it was very smart to not show too much and to not linger on it, to not have any torture element in there. And so for me, as somebody who very easily can be turned off by something like that, I was actually able to get through it just fine. I understand some won't, but for me, that was the one thing where I was a little touchy about, and those two big sequences back to back were about as far as you can go without crossing that line for me. So thankfully, it did not hurt my enjoyment whatsoever. Now we have Sienna visiting Jonathan at his college campus, and she gets introduced to the podcast chick, Mia. And Mia was somebody that I described in my negatives because I felt like the character, maybe the performance, was just a bit overbearing. I know what they were going for there, the disrespect of trauma victims and, survivors, and trying to turn them into celebrities and just people not having any self-awareness whatsoever. Those people absolutely exist. And exploring how that affects people that have gone through this was certainly something that was interesting. It was just a bit much. I wish they would have dialed that character back a little bit, and I think it would have succeeded a bit more for me. But you have Mia doing the celebrity treatment to Sienna and having no self-awareness whatsoever, and Sienna just unloads on her. As she should. The fact that Jonathan ran downstairs and was immediately pissed at his sister for that, fuck you, Jonathan. Get your sisters back a little bit, dude. You were there. You saw the shit she went through. Nonetheless, she gets her interaction with Mia, tells her to go fuck herself, essentially. They go downstairs to this little private room, and then Sienna actually starts to confront Jonathan about these findings that he had, these things that he was figuring out, or these things that he was speculating on while she was in this mental institution, and sent her letters. And so they kind of start to talk about what he found, giving us our first little details of how Art and Vicky and even the pale-eyed girl from the second film, basically giving us our first hint at explanation of what exactly is going on there. What's the purpose? What's the end goal? How do they all fit together? And they essentially are saying that there's ways for demons to come back to Earth, and they have to utilize a vessel of somebody that has undergone absolutely a horrific experience. Vicky being one, this little girl who was mutilated and turned into the pale-eyed girl from the second one being the other one. And then an angel, essentially, this protector, would be brought up as a counterbalance, as somebody who can oppose them to keep them in check and keep them from being too powerful, which is Sienna. And so we start to get a little bit of an explanation there about exactly what the goal of Art and Vicky, or this entity, is, and what Sienna's role is in all of that. And I had a couple of people ask me in various platforms, like, what happened with the pale-eyed girl? Like, is it Vicky now? Like, what'd you get out of that? And the way that I kind of interpreted what was going on there is that the pale-eyed girl was very much like a watcher in the second film. That is the entity, that is the demon that resurrected Art, that is utilizing Art kind of in the same way that Freddy utilized Jason in Freddy versus Jason as the mutilator. Let him loose, let him off the leash, and let him rack up a body count and cause carnage for the end goals of what this demonic entity is. And after Art the Clown got his ass handed to him by Sienna in Terrifier 2, my assumption is that the entity left the form of the pale-eyed girl and then went into Vicky at the post-credit scene of Terrifier 2 to have something that is more of a physical threat, to where she can now kind of be backup for Art if needed, to ensure that he does not get killed again. And so that's kind of how I read it. That's my explanation for why the pale-eyed girl is not in this film, and now Vicky is the one with the glow eye, and why she's the one kind of pulling the strings, seemingly. So we get our first little answers regarding that. And then Sienna tells Jonathan, I need to go retrieve this sword. This sword might be the only thing that can protect us and can defeat Art and Vicky. And so she needs to go back to the Terrifier, which is where the climax of Terrifier 2 was, and the sword should still be buried there. And this was a scene that very obviously, to me, felt like it was cut out of the movie for time, because you go from that to Sienna arriving back at the house with sword in hand, presumably. It's in a box, but you know what it is. And I have a couple of people that I have read where they really did not like that. Even a couple of people that I was at the theater with last night were kind of on the fence about that not being shown. And while I think Damien has already kind of hinted there's going to be a director's cut of this movie eventually, I would be shocked if that sequence is not put back into the film. I'd be shocked to find out that he didn't actually shoot that. I think it's fine to cut it. I think it was absolutely okay to go from point A to point B of just her talking about what she's going to go do and then coming home with the sword. I don't know if we needed to see a scene with her going back to this scene of the crime from the second film, digging up this sword, and then getting the fuck out of there. So I was totally cool with the way that that transition happened. So she comes back home with this box. It's already wrapped up like a gift. She puts it behind the tree, presumably to kind of keep it hidden so that nobody cuts themselves, and so she knows where it is if she needs it. But Gabby notices it. There was a kind of a exposition earlier about her being a snooper and finding gifts and looking into gifts and things like that. So she has the blade now, and then Art shows up at the campus that Jonathan is at and finds Cole, I believe his name was, and Mia talking in the dorm room about how she's pissed off at Sienna, and Cole's telling her, like, you were in the wrong, bitch, sorry. And she starts to make all these jokes. Well, not really jokes. She starts to make these comments about her infatuation with Art the Clown and how he's like the most prolific serial killer since Jack the Ripper. And you get all these great little David Howard Thornton moments where he's like, oh, stop it. And, it's a great little comedy there before the carnage that comes afterwards, and how she wants to be able to feel what it's like to be in the presence of that type of evil. That's why she wants to get Sienna and or Jonathan on this podcast. And then we get our shower scene. And even from the teaser trailer, which I did not watch, I didn't watch any trailers before I watched this, but when I was editing my review and saw the teaser trailer, you could tell from the trailer that was going to be the scene. There's always the scene in a Terrifier film. The first one was the chick upside down. The second one was the bedroom scene. And this one is the shower scene. So Cole and Mia are doing their thing in the shower. And Art the Clown finds them and just starts to rev this chainsaw. And you get a solid couple of minutes of carnage of him just tearing them the fuck up with this chainsaw. And the way that he cuts her down to pieces, and while she's still there, he kind of takes off his glasses and like, hey, you're in the presence of me now, bitch. How's it feel? And then goes to work on Cole. And wow. Yeah. Chainsaw up the ass, chainsaw down the balls. I mean, this guy gets tore the fuck up, and it was pretty extreme. Like, it was definitely the one that everybody out of the theater was talking about the most. Now, for me personally, maybe it's because I'm desensitized. Maybe it's because I come into these movies expecting this now with the third film. This one did not overtake the shock value or the impact that the bedroom scene or the upside down kill did for me. For me, the bedroom scene is still like the most disturbing thing just because of how long it goes on and how elaborate he gets with just making that girl suffer. But this is the standout kill sequence of the movie for sure. And I loved the detail that after Art is done, the floor is covered in blood and he lays down and does the little snow angel that turns into a blood angel. Again, just so sickly creative to hold on to that Christmas theme while also kind of just continuing to develop out Art's sick, twisted brand of humor. So that is your big money shot scene of this movie. And I'd be very curious. Let me know in the comment section below, what was the standout kill for you? Like, that's definitely the one that's going for how gruesome and how drawn out it is. For me, obviously, I said earlier, it was the skull unwrapping, almost like a present. That's my favorite kill of the movie. But what is yours? Let me know down below. Then we are back at the house with Sienna and her family, and they see on the news that this bomb has went off in the mall, and Sienna immediately thinks that it's Art, and so she goes into a panic attack. She's trying to get Jonathan on the phone and trying to get him to come with them, and so Uncle Greg leaves to go get Jonathan, and Sienna wears herself out and eventually falls asleep. And then we get this little dream sequence that was another really interesting piece of lore here. And this sequence is very short, but what I kind of grasped from it visually is that you have like the Virgin Mary, is what it looked like to me, holding onto a chain and forcing this demon to forge the Valkyrie armor that she wore a cosplay version of in Terrifier 2 and presumably will wear a real version of at some point in this franchise, perhaps the next film. And so that was another interesting little nugget of lore there. Like her armor is forged from, heaven and hell. A lot of crazy themes going on in this movie. She wakes up from this weird fever dream, goes downstairs, and lo and behold, Art and Vicky have already entered the house. And it's revealed that Uncle Greg is fucked up. He's kind of stapled up onto the wall, almost like a crucifixion. And you also have Vicky wearing the crown of thorns, which is another thing, another fourth taboo there that, as I'm recording this, my buddy Brian Lomax is in the theater watching this film, and I felt the need to actually prepare him for those visuals. I was like, it doesn't linger on it. It doesn't make any like overt statements on it. It doesn't go too far with it. It's just there. But I know how sensitive you are with that type of stuff and your thoughts on this franchise already. So just be warned. There's a crown of thorns. There's a little bit of visuals going on there that you might not appreciate. And I actually had somebody out of the theater whenever I saw it with a crowd last night say the same thing, that they were like, that was almost too much for me. So another thing now, 4 things that can very harshly turn off a certain group of people. But you have Vicky wearing the crown of thorns. You have Art that is putting up Christmas decorations using Uncle Greg's intestines. And you have Aunt Jess that is tied up in a chair. They incapacitate Sienna and tie her to another chair where they're facing each other. And then they reveal with this little cage present in the middle, this skull that has been chewed of all the flesh. And they say, there's Gabby's skull right there. And so they both start freaking out. And eventually Art and Vicky go to finish off Aunt Jess. They hammer this tube into her mouth, put the rats into the tube, and use a blowtorch, very similar to like Too Fast, Too Furious, to get them to burrow down. Another sick, twisted kill that was just like, oh God. Like, of all of the horror icons out there, if I had to pick one to be killed by, Art, fuck no. Like, I'm throwing that card out of the deck. I'm not even trying that. Like, I'll take Jason and Freddy and Chucky and Pinhead and Bruce the Shark and anybody else. I'll deal with all those motherfuckers at the same time before I endure one of Art's versions of a kill, because damn. So yeah, Aunt Jess, Uncle Greg out for the count, presumably Gabby as well. And you get a lot of Vicky being the one in control in this sequence. Vicky was another kind of surprise for me in this movie, how she kind of rose up and almost kind of stole the thunder from Art to a certain degree, where she, again, is starting to give a little more context to what the plan is, where she's trying to dismantle Sienna's life from top to bottom, take everything and everybody that she loves and cares about, strip her down to nothing so that she's so weak that she can embody Sienna as a vessel. So you get a scene where she grabs her by the throat, and you get like, exorcist shit happening with the wind and the white eyes, and Sienna overpowers and resists it. So she's still not quite weak enough yet. And then she reveals, or maybe just before this, reveals that, that skull over there, that's not Gabby. And they put the glasses on and reveals that that is presumably Jonathan's skull. I don't think that's a fake out kill. That's another question that I've heard a lot of people ask. Like, do you think that was real? Do you think that Jonathan's actually alive and they were just doing that to kind of mentally fuck with her? I'm pretty sure he's dead. I don't know if Elliot Fulham was busy during the production of this movie. Maybe he's doing things in his music career or something, or maybe that's just the way that Damien wanted to write this character. I was a little bummed at how much of a reduced role Jonathan got in this movie, because with him being such a helpless victim in the second film, I kind of wanted to see him rise up a little bit, kind of have his balls drop a bit and be a little bit more of a fighter in this third film. And that's not what we got at all. We did have him be kind of the more mentally stable of the two. So in a way, there's a little bit of a role reversal, but I just wanted a little more from him. And the fact that it ends with him being killed off screen, to me, it's like, okay, well, we're never going to get that from Jonathan. That's another thing too, that I've had a number of people have mixed response to, the fact that Jonathan's death was off screen. And my simple argument for that is they wanted the shock value of that reveal. If we saw Art and Vicky even just walk into Jonathan's room, we would have known he's done. we would have known to expect that reveal. And I don't think we needed to see that kill. I just don't feel that was necessary. So there's some people out there that don't like the fact that was off screen. They feel like that kind of betrays what Terrifier is all about. We want to see every character get their moment to scream and wail. For me, if they're going for that shocking reveal, that little, switcheroo of whose skull it is, I don't think you can achieve that by showing that kill. So I was totally fine with that. And I was genuinely surprised when I saw this at the world premiere when they put the glasses on. I was like, oh, fuck, no, it's him. Damn, that's fucked up. So now, with them still getting just enough resistance out of Sienna, Vicky and Art go to get Gabby. You get some great acting out of Lauren Levera in this sequence. I mean, basically this entire third act, but in this sequence specifically, she goes for it. And I think she did a phenomenal job. So she is flipping out. She's wailing and crying, begging for Gabby's life. Take me instead. And Gabby very slyly basically tricks them into like, well, she never got to open my present. And so they trick them into giving the sword box to Sienna, which I like how that played out. And so she's able to, after he smashes her hand with a hammer, is able to unwrap the present, get the sword, and start to go to town. And if there's one thing that Lauren Levera does great that a lot of final girls aren't able to do is her own stunt work. She's a martial artist, so she's very convincing in these scenes. When she has her time to kick ass, she kicks major ass. So you get Sienna taking on Vicky and Art, and I love when it first kicks off where she, slashes Art's throat, cuts the rope that is holding her, and then fucking just whoosh, just throws the sword right into the middle of Vicky. That shit was badass. And so Vicky's down for the count. Art's on the defense now. She gets the sword. She's, hacking away at Vicky, decapitates that bitch, and you see the little light go out in the one eye. And then it's Sienna versus Art for a whole sequence. And he gets some damage in, he gets some blows in, so does she. And eventually she reigns victorious. And unfortunately, just as she reigns victorious and stabs him in his chest and is about to finish the job, and you can kind of see the light go out in his eyes kind of go white. Right before she can get the kill shot, the blood and the corpse of Vicky start to melt and opens up a portal to what I presume is hell in the floor, and Gabby falls into it and is hanging on. So she has to leave Art and avoid taking the kill shot to go and try to save Gabby really quick by holding onto this sword and having her hold onto the other side. It slips, and so Gabby and the sword fall into what I presume is hell. The portal closes. Sienna looks. Art is gone. And then she looks down at her hands and the wounds where she was holding the sword, which her dad said it cannot harm the character, the Valkyrie character. Her hand automatically closes up. And, let's talk about the dad for a second, too, because we're at the end of the film. So she pretty much leaves it as Gabby. She vows to find her. So obviously that's the direction we're going to have in Terrifier 4. She's going to have to find a way to go to hell to save her niece and to retrieve this sword and to take out Art once and for all. But there's a couple of scenes spliced into the film where you get Jason Patric as the dad. And I didn't presume he was going to have a large role because he was added to the cast very late on. I wouldn't be surprised if that was reshoots that was added in. But you have him talking with a young Sienna, and he always draws these boy superheroes. And so he eventually draws the Valkyrie character for her as a girl superhero as a gift. And when he tries to give the painting to her, the drawing, he has this vision or something, and it shows some of the shots and some flashes from the events of Terrifier 2, and he has this really fucked up, sinister look on his face. And so that's still the big question mark, is what's going on with Sienna's dad. We still don't know very much there. That's the one giant question mark that was introduced in Terrifier 2 that we still don't have a whole lot of context to. We can speculate, and with the information that we have, my best guess is that, I don't know if it's God or somebody else, whoever is enacting this master plan, whoever it is that's in charge of making sure that an angel or a protector is brought up to be able to battle this demon that is eventually going to rise. I think they had to use Sienna's dad as kind of a vessel to draw things as a warning, as an omen, to kind of get her ready by having that drawing and getting her the sword. I'm sure we're going to get a lot more of that in the next film. But that's kind of what I figure now, is that, he he went nuts. They said in the second film he was nuts, he was abusive, and then eventually he drove his car into a transformer, and the car, you know, burned him alive. And so what I assume is that he kind of had to set his daughter on this path. You know, he knew a demon was coming. He knew Art the Clown was coming. He knew Vicky was coming. And he knew that his daughter was the one that was going to be the protector. And so he had to do certain things to get her ready. And we're probably going to get more context for that in the next film. But that's still the big question mark that was left lingering in this film to be explained later. But after she vows to find Gabby, you get one last scene of Art the Clown defeated, run down, fucked up, getting onto a bus again, as he did at the beginning of the film, and sitting there with his eyes wide open, and a woman's looking at him, and he just brings up the little horn and smiles and honks it, and that is Terrifier 3. I really enjoyed this movie. I really did. As somebody who really loves the second film, I think it's a great counterpart. I think that what they did to cut things and make sure that it's closer to a 2-hour runtime, a little bit shorter than the third film, I think it works well. I think that it moves a lot quicker. You get a lot more art carnage spaced throughout the film. And so even the kills, even the Terrifier brand of carnage, I think was more prevalent for sure. And each kill felt like its own set piece, but was spaced more throughout the movie. So even if you're somebody who's not as into the story and the lore that they have added since the second film, there's still a lot of just art fucking people up like they were in the first film. That kind of makes this a nice bridge between the tone and the approach of the first and the second film, kind of a happy medium. And I love the Christmas aesthetic. Like, this is going to be very high up there. If I was to rank my favorite Christmas horror films, Black Christmas is still number one, probably always will be. But this might be number 2 or number 3. You know, there's a lot of them out there that I enjoy, but very few that I can see myself rewatching and enjoying over and over again like I did this film. So I think it was a really cool way to continue off of some of the things that they did in Terrifier 2. To me, they gave enough answers without giving too many. I liked the answers that I got, and the things that I'm still able to speculate on, I enjoy speculating on them. I left a little frustrated in Terrifier 2 for as much as I loved it with how little was answered. And for me, this one was much more satisfying in that regard. I still haven't decided which one I like the best. You know, I'm going to be doing a ranking after this that's going to come out a day later. And Terrifier 2 and Terrifier 3 are very close for me. You know, when I watched the world premiere, I had a great time with it, but I was like, yeah, Terrifier 2 is still my favorite. But when I watched it last night and watched them back to back especially, I was like, damn, you know, I don't know. There's things that I love about Terrifier 2 that I think are stronger in that film, and there's a lot of things in Terrifier 3 that I think are stronger in that film. So it's a lot closer than I initially thought. But I really dug what they did here. I think that it's amazing to see the success that they've had. I mean, my theater was packed last night, and I never see that unless it's like a big Marvel release, like a Deadpool and Wolverine or an Avengers film. My theater is never packed. And there was only the front 2 rows that had some empty seats last night. And damn near everybody was wearing Terrifier 3 merch. Like, almost everybody. There was 2 different people that had the same shirt as me, and we were like, hey. So it's just very cool to see such a boots to the ground, independent franchise with the origin story that this had rise to prominence the way that it has. And I am a fan of it. Not everybody is a fan of it. It's not everybody's cup of tea, and I understand why. But I dig what these last 2 films especially have done, and so I really dug Terrifier 3. So let me know all of your thoughts down below, guys. This is a full spoiler discussion, so you could talk about every detail of this film. If you want to speculate, if you have different interpretations of things, if you have different ideas of where things might go, let's all discuss it down in the comment section below and unpack Terrifier 3 and wait very impatiently for Terrifier 4. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, please click over here for all of my 2024 new release reviews. I'm also going to put my Terrifier 3 spoiler-free review up here for you to check out. Please like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.